It's one of the most commonly misunderstood parts of owning an electric vehicle, but it's also one of the most essential parts of owning an EV, a place to charge your car. If you live in a major city, or you live in an apartment complex without any dedicated off-street parking, or perhaps your rental home includes a garage with only a very basic single light inside of it that you can't charge your car from, you'll likely have to rely on public charging infrastructure to make EV ownership possible. That means you're either lucky enough to park somewhere during the workday where you can charge up while you work, or perhaps you end up visiting a fast charging station a few times a week just to top off electrons for a few more days of travel. If you're someone who is lucky enough to own your own home, or perhaps you found one of those super rare rentals that's actually a privately owned home with a normal garage or off-street parking, then you probably have either purchased or are considering purchasing an at-home charging station, one that's either permanently wired into your home's electrical system with a dedicated breaker in the main panel, or perhaps one that plugs into a 240-volt dryer outlet or similar that was already in the garage. And if that's you, you've probably thought long and hard about the various charging stations you could buy. You've probably examined pretty basic units that offer little more than electrical delivery to your car's charge port. You might have examined ones that are capable of being controlled by a smartphone over your home network, or perhaps even have built-in energy management systems that allow you to only charge when the grid is producing green electricity. And here at this channel, we are inundated with pictures from companies wanting us to test their latest and greatest EVSEs, that's electric vehicle supply equipment, or to put it in more common parlance, an EV charger. But today I'm going to discuss something that I hoped I'd never have to. What happens when a charging station that was once reliable and feature-rich becomes a problematic, troublesome device with little to no solid technical support? And of course, I'm going to discuss what I'm going to do about it. While our editing machines run Mac OS, which is the antithesis of an open source platform, I've been using Macs since the 1990s, and most of the expertise and software we've developed to edit videos for this channel quickly and efficiently are based on Mac ecosystems. Our servers run Linux, mainly Debian and Ubuntu. My home server runs on RAID. It's a commercial product for sure, but a commercial product that's got a one-time license fee and is built on top of Slackware, which itself is free. Our home media server ran Plex until last year, but we then switched it to the fully open source Jellyfin due to privacy concerns we had with Plex and its march towards mandating an online internet connection to work. My home automation system is built on the excellent open source Home Assistant software. I'm currently going through my home, replacing proprietary light bulbs from Philip Hughes with fully hackable ESP32-based devices from Shelly. And yes, this is my Rage Against the Garage Door Opener device, my Rat GDO, that arrived the other day. A middle finger to Chamberlain and its decision in the last year to remove all third-party access to its garage door openers just so it could force you to use its terribly built and unreliable smartphone app, which, as you might expect, tracks everything you do and is packed with adverts. Having devices that we can log into and interrogate or pull data from makes day-to-day life a little more customizable and a little more fun. I can pull data directly from my solar panels, so I know just how much energy I'm making at a given point in time. And even if the internet goes down, everything works. The It Just Works experience was one we've enjoyed for a long time with our JuiceBox charging stations. At least, it was until the start of this year. And now it's become a nightmare. I'm going to explain what's going on and why we are where we are and what our proposed solution is to fix it, but first, a bit of history. When we first moved to the US in 2015, we opted to buy a Siemens charging station to plug into the 30-amp dryer outlet in the garage of our rented townhome. The model I chose was a non-connected charging station with no functionality other than plug in and charge and a selectable 2, 4 or 8 hour delay function. But based on my research, I knew inside the unit there was a physical switch that allowed me to derate the charging station from the 40 amps of maximum current it was capable of providing from the factory to closer to the 24 or so amps that the 30 amp circuit in my townhome could safely provide. That charging station provided power to our 2013 Nissan Leaf the entire time we lived there. But when we purchased our own home in 2019, we decided it was time to retire the charging station and opt for one with more smarts. So we chose the excellent second-generation JuiceBox Pro from eMotorWerks, a proven product with lots of support for extra features and a product that was well known and loved by the EV community. eMotorWerks used to offer EV conversions among other services and had developed the JuiceBox as an open-sourced charging station funded by a successful Kickstarter campaign. It initially was offered as either a finished product you could buy directly from the company or as a build-it-yourself kit with capabilities of providing up to 15 kilowatts of AC power. The price was far lower than most products on the market at the time, and the capabilities of the charging station far exceeded the majority of more expensive, less practical products from rival firms. eMotorWerks even developed an open-source CHAdeMO fast charging product, but that never reached mass production if memory serves correctly. I purchased my first JuiceBox, a JuiceBox 40, in May 2019, and by the time I'd purchased it, the company had stopped making DIY kits and the JuiceBox was on its second or maybe third iteration. Even though the unit was now much more professional looking, every JuiceBox came with the ability to connect to the internet, allowing you to use a smartphone app to control your charging station, set charging profiles, and even tell the station to only charge when the local grid was producing green energy. It also came with the capability to share a single power source between multiple charging stations. Thanks to a then recently revised electrical code, it was possible to put 2 charging stations on the same single power feed, as long as those 2 charging stations could intelligently share their power load to ensure that the total capacity of the breaker wasn't exceeded. In other words, you could put 2 charging stations capable of 40 amps power draw on a single 50 amp circuit from your breaker box, and the charging stations would intelligently negotiate power levels. If you had one car plugged in that was capable of pulling the full 40 amps, just one station would take all of the available power. But if you plugged in a second vehicle, the 2 stations would split the total available power until either one vehicle was unplugged or had finished charging, and then the other unit would ramp its power delivery back up. And this was a game changer for us. While one, or maybe 2 other charging stations on the market had the capability to allow you to do this, only the JuiceBox ecosystem allowed you to truly dial in the exact power level for each unit. While eMotorWerks was originally acquired by EnelX back in 2017, a full 2 years before I purchased my first JuiceBox, the team working on the JuiceBoxes were pretty much the same people who had worked on it prior to acquisition, and things carried on pretty smoothly. Any issues were quickly dealt with, EnelX's JuiceNet app was reasonably reliable, and the company even provided an API to allow third-party developers to work with JuiceNet devices. At this point, full disclaimer, I should note that I was sent a couple of different JuiceNet units over the years to examine and evaluate for the channel. EnelX sent us twin JuiceBoxes so that we could test the power sharing system and make a video for the channel. And we also ended up getting a newer, next generation unit sent to us, also for review. And all of those units worked just fine. The only issue we occasionally had until recently was the fact that one of the twin units in our garage would occasionally suffer a stuck contactor if it was providing power and then we had a power cut. The remedy was luckily pretty simple. Turn off the power, give it some percussive maintenance to the outside of the case to free the stuck relay, and then power it back on. And yes, that was the official remedy given to us by EnelX techs. I'm not joking. Thanks to a third-party JuiceNet integration for Home Assistant, I was even able to integrate my juice boxes into my home automation setup, writing a little automator script to automatically turn down the charge rate, or in fact completely pause it, when the local electrical grid was producing carbon-intensive electricity. I was also able to monitor power consumption from charging stations, which allowed me to track just how much power each of my cars was using. And so it was until the start of last year, when EnelX announced a change to its tech. Customers were told of a brand new app that was coming. We were told that the JuiceNet moniker was being ditched in favour of EnelX Way, and that eventually we'd all have to transition our charging stations over. Initial reports from people whose charging stations had been transitioned early on were terrifyingly poor. People complained that their EnelX branded juice boxes would randomly stop charging or error out. One customer complained that their charging station would suddenly pause midway through a charging session, leaving them without the range they needed to make journeys the next day. And in pretty much every online report I can find, complaints about customer support abound. Some people were lucky and transitioned back to the old JuiceNet platform after bitterly complaining about it, and some people, like me, stayed on it for the entire year. Worst still, everyone who asked official techs about the JuiceNet API and third-party access were told either that the support agent had no idea on the future of the protocol, or that the company was definitely not planning on transitioning it over to the new platform. I'm not sure why my particular charging station stayed on the old software for so long, but I was able to use my juice boxes and the old JuiceNet integrations and app all the way through until the end of last year. When I plugged 2 different EVs into the shared charging stations, they agreed on how much power each could draw, and everything was good. I could even plug in my Vectrex VX1 using an adapter, a vehicle that only pulls 1.6 kilowatts peak, and the other charging station would simply gobble up the remaining power available on the circuit. Then I got the email. The email stated that the old network was going to stop working in just a few weeks' time at the start of this year, and that everyone was going to be transitioned over to EnelX, if they hadn't already. Now, I had seen this coming, and I'd been smart enough to put a network block on my home network to stop my juice boxes from accessing the internet to call home. They were still able to see each other and talk to each other about how much power they were using, so the power sharing worked using our local network, and I could interrogate the charging stations. They just couldn't phone home and talk to EnelX, which meant that they weren't able to get the new firmware EnelX was pushing for the EnelX Way app. But I was told I needed to sign up for the new app, and I had a plan. A neat piece of third-party software whose name I'm not going to discuss here for fear they might get into trouble with EnelX. I hoped that the software would allow me to locally control the charging stations as I had with the previous firmware, but sadly it only provides power information at this time. I do know that the developers on this excellent open source project are hoping to eventually execute more control over the units, but there's only so much you can do when software that was once open source and community facing becomes closed source and commercial. EnelX has become increasingly insistent that customers move over, and so at the tail end of the year, during the break, with a proxy in place to retrieve information directly from my juice boxes, I removed the block and let my juice boxes phone home. They updated, and then I was instructed to sign up with the new EnelX Way app. And that's when things went wrong. EnelX Way's new app won't accept the credentials I've given it, and even though I've tried to reset the password multiple times using multiple different processes, it refuses to let me sign into the new app. That means I have technically no direct way to control my charging stations. The new app is frankly buggy as heck. Just check out the reviews on Google or Apple's Play stores, and it seems to be focused on charging away from home rather than at home charging. Which leads me to suspect that this is all about trying to grab money from customers on the road rather than provide a seamless at-home charging experience. The old app is no longer available. It kind of sort of works, it's still on my phone, and when I prevented my charging stations from calling home to the new server, they popped back up on the old app, the app that EnelX told me would stop working at the start of the year, and still works. The bad news, though, is that I can no longer control my charging stations. I can't start or stop charging remotely, and I cannot use the power sharing feature. I found that out just last week when Em came to work for the first time for the year. Our juice boxes here at the studio provided a paltry 3 kilowatts of charging power rather than the 6 kilowatts technically possible, even though only one of the juice boxes was in use. And having played with it over the past week or so, I can confirm that they're now stuck in a permanent 3 kilowatt maximum power output and don't appear to know that they can power share. Our smart, adaptable, useful charging stations are now very, very broken indeed, and support tickets to EnelX have gone pretty much ignored. I had one email 2 weeks ago saying they're looking into it, but I've heard nothing back. I'm sure at this point, some people will laugh and say it's my own fault and that had I purchased X or Y charging station or chosen a Tesla, everything would be fine. But the reality of internet-connected devices that you don't fully own or control is that sometimes software updates can screw the pooch. In fact, the very day I'm recording this, my Ford home integration system, which had been working gloriously for about a month, completely failed to work to back up our home in a power cut, thanks, I think, to a recent software update that seems to have unfixed what was, all too briefly, working. In the case of the juice boxes, I am unfortunately not alone. There are people all across the US and Canada with similar headaches, and some of our YouTube friends and channel supporters also have the same issue. Some of you have the old firmware, and you did what I did to prevent the boxes from phoning home, giving you at least some semblance of control, at least even today. Others have been unlucky, and you are now stuck with a buggy, unreliable, or downright non-functional charging setup. A project that was once open and embraced what users needed is frankly now part of a massive megacorporation that doesn't seem to give a rat's bottom. Which brings me to what I plan on doing to get around this. First up, and it does give me great pains to say this, we can no longer recommend any EnelX charging stations, and if you are someone with an old EnelX charging station running the old JuiceNet software, for God's sake, don't let it connect to the internet. There are, as I've hinted, projects out there that are designed to hijack communications between EnelX and your JuiceBox to give you at least some data or control, but right now, if you're on the new software, you won't be able to control your charging stations anymore. I've talked to several folks about the possibility of trying to open up the units and flash the microprocessors inside them. Their juice boxes have Atmel-based microprocessors in them, and technically it might be possible to flash them with older software in an attempt to regain control. But I suspect the most sensible solution at this point is to just go the whole hog and retrofit some open source hardware inside the existing boxes, reusing the charge cable and the power contactors as possible. One that can accommodate power sharing would be an advantage. Of course, a couple of obvious choices include OpenEVSE, which is an open source and very sophisticated charging station that doesn't natively support power sharing between two different charging stations, but I'm told can be coded to do so by using its solar divert feature, which is a feature that allows you to reduce the available current of a charging station in response to external environmental changes, like a change in how much power you're generating on the roof of your home. That's the EVSE, by the way, that Kate Walton-Elliott owns, and she's very happy with it. The other option would be for me to dive into the world of ESP32 and use one of the many new projects that have sprung up that use ESP32 or more powerful ESP8266 microprocessors. Either way, though, I want to be able to control my charging stations again. And I'd rather that something I own doesn't have its software remotely changed by a company that isn't interested in how I or others use its charging station. Of course, this is my own personal opinion, and I guess an end review of what is a very bad situation. But if you are in the same boat, you have ideas on how to fix it without buying a brand new charging station, or perhaps already have a solution, let us know in the down below. Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them below in our Discord chat room, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They are some of the more than 1,500 people who help fund this channel through Patreon and YouTube, covering our bills, paying our team, and making sure that we can be 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the links below. There are a range of different tiers you can sign up for, from as little as $1 a month, or if you pay yearly, about $10.08 per year. A huge welcome to our newest supporters: Tantalus A. Bond, Michael Baker, Christopher Lawrence, David J. Stober, Noah Tutak, and Ian Hoffman. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your week of fame. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations, and we even have an old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at, address also below. And if you're in need of some swag, you'll find our swag store in the down below. This month, we're celebrating electric for everyone with an amazing new t-shirt design by our in-house artist and animator, Erin. Get yours today by heading to our Redbubble store. We've got some fantastic content coming up, so make sure you're subscribed on PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you very soon. We make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we all think that this one is also well worth a look. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving.